So welcome to the Node.js Node API team meeting for May 6, 2022. We'll follow our standard approach of looking at issues that were tagged for milestone 11. Before we get started, does anybody have any announcements that they'd like to share?
No, okay, I have one. We released the version 5 for Node.js API. Then we dropped the support for Node 12. We added some new things and fix on documentation. So yeah, that's it. And that's it.
Great, yeah, no, and thanks for doing that that release. It's good to see that get that out. Any other announcements before we get started? If not, I'm going to share a window here and we can get going. So, okay, so here we've got the, I'm just going to hide that. Okay. Right, so first of all, we have stale issues, node add-on stale issues. So let me just open that up. We'll go down to the bottom. I see there's one new one that Kevin added. So I'm going to click there. So this one, I guess, was marked stale, so they added it in. Let's see. This is a duplicate of 669. So what was?
I believe this issue should be fixed by the long-standing PR with BIM.
Okay.
And yeah, the number.
Just gonna log in here. Let me just stop sharing for 1 sec while I log in. Okay, so I will share again. Okay, so this one we believe should be resolved by that.
Linked to the PR.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
And that's the right one?
Yeah, right.
Okay, so I don't think there's anything more to discuss on that. We just gotta continue to work on that long-awaited PR. Oh, okay, sorry. Okay, I don't know what happened there, but I'll just go back to. Okay, oops, right, stale issues, right, so back to here. So we talked about that one, this one. This one, I think, Vladimir, I've seen you continue to work on that, right?
Yeah, sorry, this week I didn't do any progress. I was traveling most of the time.
Sure, okay, but we've got some work going on. Sounds good. This one, I think we just sort of have in our backlog.
Yeah, I think I may just get some time this weekend, so I'll try to look at it.
Okay, great. And that's all the ones that we had on the backlog there. terms of stale issues. So moving on to tracking issues. I don't think there's anything new there. If we look at npm node add-on. Looks like it's just still chugging along. Nothing, no major differences there. So if we then look at the drive towards full coverage, I don't know, Jack, if there's anything that you have to mention on that front. Just trying to actually remember. Oop, there's Jack, if you're talking, you're on mute, so.
Sorry, can you guys hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, yeah, sorry. So I'm just slowly making progress through the GitHub issue repo, and hopefully we'll close those out in a couple months.
Sounds good. Okay. And then there are, just as a note for anybody who might be watching, there's lots of sort of good first issues tagged there. If anybody wants to sort of place or figure out how to get started helping out on the node add-on API side of things. In terms of enabling debug testing, still haven't done that. So then we're back to looking at the issues raised by module owners or someone. So let me just node add-on API. Any ones in particular that people want to call out on this front? Can look at the pull requests. The format all code, I think, unfortunately, I went to look and land that and it needed a bit of a rebase. So I think that should be our priority, that once we get that rebase, we land that so that it doesn't have to be rebased again. This one, I don't know if there's anything in particular to discuss. Don't think there's anything I really see new there. Here, this one's brand new, but we can take a look at, unless somebody's already looked at it. This one I commented on a few of them yesterday. One that I thought was kind of interesting was, let's see if I can scroll down. Oh, come on. Where was it? The spread operator. Basically, you know, the comment was that like they created an object through an API or Node API, and the things like the spreader operator didn't work. Nope. And I think, you know, having looked at it, what I think I figured out is that, you know, when we have this instance accessor, which we've created, so, you know, some of the examples we have show creating, like defining a class and using that to then create the constructor for object wraps. And what that does, though, is that creates properties and accessors on the prototype. And things like keys and object spread only work on own properties, not things you inherit from the prototype. And that's why those properties weren't showing up in like the spread, or if you did keys and stuff like that. We can actually add, if we define properties instead using you know, a defined properties call in the constructor, for, you know, we get a callback when an object, a wrapped object is created. If we then define properties in this way using property descriptors, it then works as expected. But I think we may need to at least update our instructions and our documentation to help people avoid that particular sort of problem that you can run into. What I didn't know, and I wonder if anybody else has any thoughts on, like, what the expectations should be in terms of, people defining this class in the instance accessor. Is I don't think there's anything we could do, like we're defining a constructor. So unless people know of some way that we could create that constructor so that we end up with own properties instead of things being inherited, I don't know that we can do anything if it's defined through the instance accessors, but I thought I'd ask here to see what people thought. And I'm just going to promote Gabriel here too. I'll just wait till Gabriel joins here.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
So what does JavaScript do, right? Like in JavaScript, if you create the class and the class has properties, those are not spreadable either, right?
I think that would be the case. I'd have to look back at their sample code. They had some sample code which says, hey, I do this with a normal object. But you can see this is node add-on API code, but I have to go back. Actually, I can go look at it right here. So here's the NAP implementation. If we go there, come on, and we go to source. And okay, I'm not there in the, where is test maybe? Right, so here, right, like in here, they're just creating an object and adding some properties, as opposed to creating a constructor and constructing it from those properties. So I think the answer to your question, Gabriel, is yeah, JavaScript will do the same thing we're doing. It just may not be obvious that that's what people should expect.
Well, they should expect the object to behave the same way as JavaScript. Maybe this person needs to be pointed at the fact that prototype properties are not counted in spread operators. I mean, it seems like it's a lack of JavaScript knowledge on their part rather than any failure of ours.
Yeah, I can kind of see though that, like, because they're not creating, like, if you just follow our instructions and our doc, you're basically creating a wrapper object and you say new on the wrapper object, right?
Yep.
And so it might not, that's where, yeah, I think I'm kind of, I agree that there's probably nothing we should do, but in the documentation, we might want to explain it a bit better, because it's probably not as obvious as it could be that it's like, oh, I'm creating a constructor, and that means that properties will be different than what I might have done if I just did a new object somewhere else, right?
All right, yeah, that's fair. So,
right?
So all those braces and instance accessors and all those that you add during the declaration of the class, that they end up on the prototype is maybe something we should point out, I suppose.
Exactly, like sort of, the instance accessor name even kind of makes me think like, oh, well, this is how I set up accesses to instances, like properties on my instance versus on the,
True.
So yeah, I think you're probably confirming what I was thinking is, like, code-wise, I don't think we should change or can change it necessarily, because I'm not sure there's a way we could set up that constructor to be any different. But some stuff in the documentation and in the examples, and even maybe in the examples, we can think about which way is better to show, right? Because, like, if most people really want it to be an own property, maybe we should show that one as the default example versus the other way, right?
Right.
Okay, that's all. If anybody else has any other comments or suggestions in terms of what we should do going forward, you can comment in on that issue. But I thought that was interesting, having looked at it, because it was like, it wasn't necessarily immediately obvious to me either. I'm just like, yeah, why aren't we getting spread properties? Like, okay, it's because of the prototype versus non-prototype thing. I don't know if there's any others that people want to call out as interesting to talk about this week.
I opened an issue on Abistable node. The issue 436.
Okay. This one, okay, yep.
Yeah, you reacted and yeah, but essentially we have this function under experimental flag, and if we want to promote, we can. I think that Node API creates syntax error and throws syntax error. I think that could be stable now. Maybe, but I don't know. What do you think about this?
How long have they been? They've been in for quite a while, right?
I didn't check, so I'm going on the docs now. Create. Okay, create syntax error was added in 17.2.0 or 16.14.0. So essentially, yes. No. Yeah, we can say we can check the commit that added the
Yeah, if we look at history, even might.
yeah. Maybe you can use blame. So
yeah, okay, that's a good idea. Let's go back there. Okay, well, it was over 2 months ago.
but it's a reformat code.
Right, that's what I was saying. This was at least. So that
Yeah.
was 15 months ago. I think it was still there.
Yeah.
So I think they've all been there for, long enough that we should promote them. Does anybody have any concerns with promoting those ones?
I think that the most recent API that we added is Node API symbol 4.
Right.
We added in Node 17.5.
It says that was in there 4 months ago.
Yeah.
I think it's also pretty low risk of needing to change or anything, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't think I have any concerns. And sorry, go ahead.
We don't have policy, that we need to follow, in terms of time,
Yeah, I don't think we've got anything like that. Let me just.
But yeah, I'm okay. If you want to wait, because maybe we need to change, something.
So this is the doc we currently have, like contributing new API. I think we would have, checked these. Right, so it says new API must be considered experimental for at least one minor release version before it can be promoted out of experimental. So we've definitely met that, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think like I don't see why not at this point. The only thing I could see is like, do we want to wait and batch them all up just before the end of the major or something like that? Okay, how did that happen? Like, would we want to do an API, do a new Node API version just before we did a major release of Node?
Okay.
But
so you
that's just another thing, that we might want to do, but I'm not saying in this case, like, I guess it's like, do we have other experimental things that if we waited a little bit longer, we might want to promote soon? And to do them all together would be the other thing that kind of I would think about.
Yeah. So when you are saying that we need to wait, for example, the 19 release for to release the new Node API version. Is it right?
No. Like, I'm just saying we might think about that. Like, is there any reason to wait till closer to a major release? Like in this case, I'm not thinking that necessarily. I'm just mentioning that as like things that we might think about doing, or if there were, if we have 3 or 4 other things that are experimental, that if we wait 2 months, we do them all in one. But I'm personally at this point would be happy to say, let's just do a new version, a new Node API version. And if we have to do another one later, there's not really any big deal, right? So unless somebody else has concerns or thinks we should wait, I'm personally happy to go ahead.
I think that we can that everyone can think to this, and maybe we can decide next week.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not urgent. So
yeah. Well, so I'm just gonna say, let's think about it this week and then decide in the next meeting.
Yeah.
Okay, that sounds good. Okay, any other issues people want to bring up in terms of Node add-on API? Otherwise, I'd flip over to look at the issues we have open in Node Core. Is open. I think it's the label. Right, there we go. Okay, mark some. Right, okay, so this was some places where we're missing some experimental.
Yeah, so
right. Yep. Okay, that's an easy. While I'm here, I will just add my 2 cents. Okay. Oops. Okay, so fixing the nappy, this one, I think we've talked about in the past. There's probably nothing else new to talk about.
Yeah, we talked about last week.
Yep. This one, some of these, I think I've been trying to get the CIs to pass on some of these.
If I knew what I can contribute to make it happen, I don't know.
Yeah, in this case, it's really just, I think, no test commit, no test pull request. Where is, which would actually failed? Assuming this doesn't look related, does it?
Seems like we have some flaky tests instead of tests, and
right.
It's a
right. So how can I just want to restart this? Can I? Yeah. So that doesn't look potentially related. So let me just see if I can get to the top. We should be able to rerun those failed jobs, rerun jobs. And then in the CI, what was the? Okay, well, let's look here. Yeah, so that's not going to be anything to do with that at all. I'm going to okay now. Should be able to resume that, and hopefully it will just run that one. Come on, resume build. Okay. So hopefully we can get that there. I think I'm the only one who's commented on that. So if somebody else from here could review and approve, that would be good, because it's always good to have two if we can. I know there's a number of other ones we were trying to get landed. Is there anything we should talk about on some of those, or?
So filter stuff. Actually, it's pragma section. Should we close it somehow? Like,
this one right here. So this one's actually done, right?
I think it's merged. We already merged this fix.
Right. Okay. So I'm going to say closing PR to address. Okay, so that's
one less issue to track.
Yep. No, that's always good. Just seeing, are there any others that are worth spending some time talking about? I know you wanted us to look at the snappy ref and nappy value one. I haven't had a chance yet to, unfortunately, but it's on my list.
What about did land with another one with fixes for the filter?
Sorry, which one is that? Which number?
Oh, yeah, no, it's still there. Like get all property names. It's a little bit below.
This one, okay.
It's also like it's tiny change, but
right, yeah. So let's see.
In,
3 failing checks, yeah. This is basically, so let me just look at the what's failed. Yeah. Okay. All right, so this change, let's see. Okay, it's just slow to come back. Right, yeah, so that won't have affected that one. Like that failure is not a related failure. So, okay, I will just go back here and resume that as well. Okay, any other ones like that that just need a little bit more attention to
Well,
keep
just
moving
these
forward?
two so far.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely need the team's attention to some other changes, like yeah.
Yeah, but those ones are more like, yeah, like that one, we need to go and take a more deep look and comment and stuff, right?
Yeah.
Okay, any other ones we should talk about this week?
I have
Go ahead.
not issue related, but a kind of generic question. If no
Sure.
one else have anything else. So my question, like, I was looking through some different documentation, and I wonder what's the general ideas about node.js to be distributed as DLL and having ABI safe API for the node.js DLL. Is it something is in works or something team wants to have or not to have?
So like you're basically talking about embedding, right?
Yes. So,
Right.
for example, I would like to have node.js be embedded, node.js DLL be embedded inside of React Native applications. So, like one of my goals.
Right. So there's been long-standing discussion of that. I personally think that would be a benefit to Node. Getting it to the point where we like ship another binary, that's the potential challenging part, in that like it takes us overhead and time to ship and keep every binary like. So there's been many suggestions. Like I would personally like us to have like a development binary and a runtime binary, kind of like, Java has, because then you can have like a smaller one that is the smallest that you need just to run things, and then you can have a bigger one that can have more tools. But every time we get into those discussions, it's like a whole nother set of things to sort of package and ship are it's painful. So there's a challenge on that front. There is already work to there's options to build Node as a shared library. And actually there's a PR I've been doing some work with to try and help get landed, because one of the teams at IBM actually ships it that way as part of one of their products across a number of platforms. So, I don't know if I'm really answering your question, but I personally think that being able to at least build as a shared library, even if we don't distribute it, is good. And there's already some work going on that front. You can, search if you search on shared library, you'll see that there's a PR which will help improve that. And I'd like to get us testing that more, so that like, even if we don't ship the binary, we know that it continues to work.
Okay, so yeah, you answered the kind of first part of my question. So it sounds like there is an interest in team already works towards it. It's great. I guess second question, is there interest to develop ABI safe API on top of this shared library?
I think that's been discussed as well. I think that we want to extend. Well, I don't know. There's been some questions like, should we extend Node API to do that, right? Like, and I think it's a good idea. I think, we'd need a broader discussion in the project, because there's, there's different people who are doing embedding today, different ways. But if we had a champion to sort of push that forward and lead the discussion, it's something I would definitely support, because I think it would be good to have that. What I can't say to you is whether we'll have, there'll be people who say, no, it's too early still, or whether it'll be the point where people are like, yeah, okay, we should actually start to, standardize the API at this point.
Okay.
So like, if you're interested in working on that, I'm happy to sort of help you do that.
Okay, well, let me explore it a little bit. So you already said that there are some PRs in works. I want to I want to do some kind of more research about the existing state of art and understand a little bit deeper before.
Yeah, here, let me find that PR for you, just so that I'm hoping to get it landed fairly soon.
But I believe it will be greatly beneficial. Like, so for example, for Electron projects, so like what we're doing with React Native, it's
yeah, like yeah. So, and that's where like they have been involved in some of the discussions, but like not actively pushing it enough to say, hey, we absolutely need it to be standardized or whatever. But yeah, I think like they should also be interested in that, to be honest. So shared library, where is it? Right, so here is the, see, I'll paste that in the chat. What is the chat? So that's the PR to kind of fix it. And then this PR, based on that, I was working to PR in some doc into our like maintaining guides, which is here. It's a little bit of out of date because it doesn't reflect some updates and discussion we've had in the other PR about how to improve, you know, fix up the support. But those are probably the two you'd want to read up on in terms of the best discussion that's going on that front right now.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay.
So,
any other questions or things before we close out for today?
One more.
Yep, go ahead.
I'm also kind of curious. Today in Node API, we have API to evaluate JavaScript. I've actually just run script, I think, like this. I'm curious, is there any interest for us to make this whole evaluation of JavaScript to be a little bit more extended, like, for example, creating bytecode and running bytecode and so on? Is there kind of any general interest in such type of APIs?
I'm wondering if this is related to snapshots. So I know Joey is working on snapshots where, and she's got it to the point where like we generate some snapshots to have like pre-generated code, V8 code that you can just load. And I know she's working on something similar for user snapshots. So like you could, I guess, somehow run your code to a certain point, take a snapshot, and then reload that. I don't know if that's along the lines of what you had in mind for the use case or something totally different.
No, it's different. Snapshots effectively kind of taking the whole heap. I actually don't know how snapshot is going to work with native modules at all. I'm pretty much more talking about like each maybe module being able to take, for example, JavaScript, create bytecode out of this JavaScript and actually execute bytecode. So technically, it makes the whole execution of big JavaScript kind of scripts faster because we don't need to pre-parse them.
Right.
So,
okay. So it's like is that related to native? Sorry, go ahead.
Maybe you are referring to the code cache. It's nothing to do
yes,
with
cache. You're right.
About the bytecode cache.
Yes.
It's available through not the built-in JavaScript API. It's the VM module. We can get a code cache through that API. I'm not sure other engines might provide such feature, so I'm not sure it will be available to Node API.
But you can run any, like if you could do it through JavaScript, you can call that from Node API, right?
No, you can't do it through JavaScript. It's but most JavaScript engines, they always have like source code and converting to bytecode and then effectively executing bytecode inside. Even like, for example, Hermes JavaScript engine, they even say that they can execute bytecode without source code. So technically, the whole idea about how Hermes interpreter for JavaScript is faster, that in production, they never use source code at all. We're just using bytecode. So technically, creation of bytecode and running bytecode is part of JavaScript engine API on Hermes as well.
Right, but I
don't know about other JavaScript engines.
Actually. I thought Legendicast was saying that this is maybe like lets you create cache data.
Yeah,
is that,
right.
that what you were saying?
Right, but that's a bit of different from the Hermes does, is that VA doesn't allow the source code to be absent from the execution, since VA might be de-optimize the whole thing and get back to repassing the source code. And there might be possibilities that the developer tools might need to fetch the source code to enable, like say, step into the source code, like something like that.
Yeah, there are two functions which are usually kind of prevent from doing it. One of them is being able get source code as a function, and another one eval function. It's actually two of these functions which require source code. But my question is more generic. Are we interested in API to add effectively creating this bytecode and executing it? So in case of V8, it will be cache data. You're right. So cache data.
Yeah, like you're saying, as an addition to an API specifically.
Yeah, it's addition to Node API. Yes, it's what I'm asking.
I'd have to think more. Like my first thought is it's not like we've typically tried to keep the things that are in the spec, and that might be getting like that ability to be able to run that way. I'm not sure is like anywhere in the spec, right?
Yeah, that's my instinct too. Like Node API is supposed to basically follow the ECMA script spec and provide a native interface for that spec, right? And this kind of assumes that all engines are implemented such that there's this intermediate representation, which is probably true, but I mean, I don't know, does JavaScript have an intermediate representation? You know, so these APIs, I don't know if they can be implemented on all engines. I mean, they can be implemented on most of the major ones, but I don't know that we should do that, honestly. And then, you know, if it's outside of Node API, do we care about ABI stability, or what is the intention there?
Yeah, my main scenario, I'm using this Node API is a kind of ABI safe API on top of JavaScript engines, and this JavaScript engine being used inside of React Native applications. So technically, effectively, startup time for React Native applications very kind of critical, and using bytecode as something how we improving this startup time. So I guess my question was mostly along the lines: is it something which we want to see in the core of Node API, or it should be actually kind of engine-specific extensions, if you like? That's what my question was about mostly.
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking engine-specific extensions. What I'm wondering is, like, do we have an API for saying run this script?
Yeah, we have a an API underscore run script, I believe. Yes.
Right. Yeah. So, like, what I wouldn't, I guess, like, could you implement it behind the scenes on that? Like, basically just say, hey, well, I'm going to cache it somewhere, and if I basically get a script, somebody passes me a script, and I can tell that script is the same as one that I already have the bytecode for, I'll just run the bytecode, right?
It should be possible, but this function is very, very kind of rudimentary because it only accepts string.
Right.
We don't even have ID, which I can use, for example, for debugging information. Like, I mean, like not ID, but I need to have effectively file name or something, which name of the script, which I can use, identify my corresponding bytecode or something.
What about checksumming? Is that going to make it slower than if you were to just execute it?
Sorry, say it again.
What about checksumming? Like you get the you get the string, you checksum. and if it matches, you load. Is the checksumming plus the loading slower than actually executing the script?
No, I think we're doing checksumming anyway. Like, it's a good idea, but still would be nice for scripts to have some name. Like it would be nice.
But that's a case where like I don't see it as big an issue if we said, well, okay, we're going to extend run script with a new signature or whatever that lets extra information be passed that like other engines could just throw away or you don't need to use. But, you know, if they're basically hints that the engine can use for optimization, that seems like a reasonable extension to me.
Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. So, for example, in Hermes, then we're given a buffer with a kind of JavaScript string. They usually check first few bytes and seeing if this first few bytes is special signature, then they interpret it as a bytecode. If it doesn't have a signature, it interprets it as a just JavaScript string. So technically, it would work.
These magic bytes are another way forward. Yeah, I mean, you know, also, you know, if the string starts with a pattern that cannot be valid JavaScript, then you know we can maybe add some logic that says, oh wait, this can't be JavaScript, so let's see if it's, you know, bytecode.
But that would be specific to what I had more in mind was like that you could, I guess it's like that doesn't help in the pre-compilation, but you know, you could always provide the JavaScript so that any engine can run it. However, you could come up with some sort of caching scheme, and if providing like an extra optional ID or something helps the engine on that front, like that's something where, okay, yeah, you provided the ID and engine doesn't use it, that's not an issue, right? But then if it means that you can use that ID to cache for your second run behind the scenes, that seems useful.
Well, probably like how source map works. It's just valid JavaScript code. It's commented out, and it can be data URL or a URL reference to another file. Just a thought.
That's right. It's easy to bundle other stuff into the JavaScript string just through comments, is what you're saying.
Interesting. And how it will be interpreted?
I think the suggestion is like if you put a comment, any other engine would just ignore it, but you'd have to look for this comment, like maybe as the first line or something.
Oh, I see. Okay, that's a good point.
Yeah, right.
Actually, I like the idea. I like this idea. Yes. And also on a related note, that today we're providing to this run script we're given as an API value. We're expecting first this to be somehow kind of created, and I'm kind of interested, like, is there any way for us to instead provide a string as a kind of buffer? So scenario, imagine like a script itself can be is a part of a resource, like it's part of inside of DLL. So maybe I don't want even kind of
Right. Yeah.
Completely kind of
right. And so in that
use external
case,
strings effectively.
Like you would want it like a pointer to a C string would be the
right, like point C string or kind of pointer.
And then other implementations would take that C string and convert it into a Node API value, but some could just execute it directly.
Right.
Yeah, that again sounds like we'd have to provide a V8 equivalent that did that extra wrapping, like maybe just did the dumb thing, right? And converted your C string into a Node API value and called the other one. But like, yeah, like that kind of addition seems like it's not platforms. You can implement it on any platform, but then you can see how it helps enable some optimization. So.
Okay, then I'll kind of try to work towards this direction, to kind of sketch some APIs and bring to attention.
Makes sense.
Thank you.
Any other things we should talk about? If not, thanks for everybody's time, and we will see you in GitHub and next week.